Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're going deep into the heart of Genesis,
Oh, yeah.
cracking open chapters 11 through 20,
Okay.
a section that I feel like sometimes gets overshadowed by those big hitters like creation or Noah's Ark.
Yeah. You're
Yeah.
right. These chapters are really foundational for
Yeah.
so much of what comes later in Abrahamic traditions.
Right, and I think,
This is where we see languages diversify, we meet the patriarchs, and we encounter these really pivotal moments.
okay, so we've got the Tower of Babel,
Right.
we've got genealogies with epic lifespans, and then we've got the call of Abram, just to name a few.
Absolutely.
It feels like a lot happens in a short span.
It does.
What's the thread
Yeah.
that connects all these seemingly disparate stories?
The thread is really the unfolding of the covenant.
Okay.
Each event in these chapters contributes to the development of God's relationship with humanity,
Okay.
specifically through the lineage of Abram.
Got it.
So think of it as a step-by-step process, setting the stage for the birth of a chosen people.
Ah, so it's not just one big story. It's a series of interconnected events that are building towards something bigger.
Precisely, and along the way,
Yeah.
we get these glimpses into human nature,
Right.
ancient beliefs, and moral dilemmas that I think still really resonate today.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Okay, let's start with the Tower of Babel.
Sure.
What jumps out at me is this human desire to make a name for themselves
Right.
by building a tower that reaches heaven.
Yes.
I mean, what was really going on there? Was it just about a physical structure?
Yeah, it's a fascinating question.
Or was there something deeper at play?
Some scholars interpret it as a challenge to God's authority,
Interesting.
almost a primal rebellion against the limits of creation.
Okay.
Others see it as a reflection of the human yearning for unity,
Yeah.
a desire to leave a lasting mark on the world.
I see that. What strikes you about their motivation?
I wonder if it's about control.
Okay.
Like building a tower to heaven almost feels like they're trying to control their destiny.
Rather than trusting in a higher power.
Okay.
And then there's this fear of being scattered,
Yeah.
of losing their shared identity.
Yeah, that's a really insightful point.
Yeah.
And I think that fear of the other,
Okay.
of diversity and the unknown, is something that we still really grapple with today.
For sure.
Just think about how languages and cultures
Yeah.
can both unite and divide us.
It makes me wonder if the scattering,
Okay.
as much as it caused division, was also a catalyst for the incredible diversity that we see in the world today.
Yeah.
Maybe God was pushing humanity to embrace difference rather than resist it.
That's an intriguing interpretation.
Yeah.
And it leads us nicely to the genealogy of Shem, which comes right after the Tower of Babel story. Now,
yeah.
often people skim over genealogies.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But what can we learn from this particular lineage?
I'll admit I tend to gloss over the begats. But
Yeah.
I did notice that Shem and his descendants lived for centuries. Like
Whoa.
Shem lived to be 600.
Yeah, 600 years old.
Is this literal?
It's so different from our own lifespans.
I know.
It makes you question how ancient people viewed time and existence. Did they measure time in the same way, or did these long years signify something else? Some scholars would suggest they represent wisdom, authority, or even like a closer connection to the divine.
Interesting.
It's a window into a very different worldview.
I like that.
Yeah.
So instead of getting bogged down in the specifics of who begat whom,
Yeah.
maybe we should be asking what these names and ages tell us about how they understood their place in the grand scheme of things.
Absolutely. And this genealogy isn't just a random list.
Right.
It traces the line from Shem to Abram, highlighting the lineage that God will use to establish his covenant.
Got it.
It's a subtle but important link.
Ah, so it's laying the groundwork for the call of Abram.
Yes.
Now that is a story that always grabs my attention.
Oh, I know, it's a good one.
Let's talk about leap of faith. God basically tells him, leave everything you know and go to a land I'll show you.
Right.
What stands out to you about this pivotal moment?
What fascinates me is that God doesn't reveal the destination right away. Abram has to trust completely,
Wow.
journey into the unknown based solely on faith in the divine promise.
Okay.
This radical trust is
Yeah.
the cornerstone of their relationship.
It makes you wonder if Abram had any doubts
Uh-huh.
if he ever questioned this call,
Right.
especially when things got tough.
And that leads us to the story of Abram and Sarai in Egypt.
Okay.
Yes. Here's where we see that even the chosen patriarch isn't immune to human fallibility.
Right.
He passes off Sarai as his sister, fearing that the Egyptians will kill him to take her.
Yeah.
This episode raises questions about the complexities of faith in the face of fear.
I get that he was afraid,
Yeah.
but it seems like such a risky plan.
Right.
Did he really believe God would protect him? Or was it more of a desperate act of self-preservation?
That's a good question.
What do you think motivates Abram's deception?
I think it's a morally ambiguous situation
Okay.
that forces us to really grapple with the tension between human instinct and divine trust.
Got it.
Did he truly believe God would intervene?
Mm-hmm.
Was it a test of his faith?
Right.
Or a lapse in judgment?
Yeah,
Perhaps it was a combination of both.
I can see that.
These stories don't shy away from the messy reality of human experience,
Oh, for sure.
even within a divine narrative.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that even those who are chosen can stumble,
Right.
and that faith isn't about being perfect, but about navigating those stumbles
Yeah.
with a sense of trust in something bigger than ourselves.
And this incident with Pharaoh isn't a one-off event. We
Right.
see this pattern repeat later in the narrative,
Right.
suggesting that this struggle with trust and deception is an ongoing part of Abram's journey.
That's a really interesting observation.
Yeah.
So it's not just about this one event,
Uh-huh.
it's about a deeper struggle
Right.
that he has to continually confront.
Right.
Speaking of challenges,
Okay.
let's talk about Abram and Lot.
Sure.
It seems like even close relationships can get strained,
Absolutely.
especially when wealth and resources come into play.
Right. Their growing herds lead to conflict,
Okay.
forcing them to make a choice.
Yeah.
What I find remarkable is how Abram handles this situation.
Okay.
He could have asserted his authority as the elder,
Yeah.
but instead he offers Lot the first choice of land,
Wow.
a gesture of generosity and peacemaking.
Really putting others first.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if Abram was already thinking about the bigger picture, about the covenant and the land that God had promised him.
Right.
Maybe he understood that true wealth wasn't just about flocks and herds,
Right.
but about something more lasting.
That's a profound insight.
And it sets up such a beautiful contrast
Yeah.
between their choices.
Yeah.
Lot, drawn by the immediate abundance of the Jordan plain, ends up in a city riddled with wickedness,
Right.
while Abram, in choosing the seemingly less desirable land of Canaan, stays on the path toward fulfilling God's purpose.
Exactly. So it's not just about the physical land.
Right.
It's about the values and priorities
Yeah.
that shape their destinies.
And that brings us to the Battle of the Kings,
Okay.
this mysterious Melchizedek.
Yes.
What's the significance of this episode within the broader narrative?
This is where things take a turn
Well-
towards the epic and the enigmatic.
Right.
The battle itself, with kings clashing over territory and power, reads like an ancient geopolitical thriller.
Totally.
But it's Abram's rescue of Lot that truly stands out.
Right.
He doesn't hesitate to risk his own safety to save his nephew,
Wow.
demonstrating his courage and loyalty.
It's interesting that right after this display of strength and leadership,
Yeah,
we're introduced to Melchizedek,
right.
the king priest of Salem.
Yes,
He blesses Abram and receives tithes from him.
he does.
What's the significance of this encounter?
Right.
Who is Melchizedek?
Yeah.
And why is this moment so pivotal?
Melchizedek is one of the most intriguing figures in Genesis.
Yep.
He appears out of nowhere,
Right.
embodies both kingly and priestly roles, and then vanishes from the narrative.
Okay.
Some scholars interpret him as a prefiguration of Christ, pointing to the future union of these roles in Christian theology.
Interesting.
The bread and wine he offers
Okay.
even foreshadow the Eucharist.
Wow. So it's not just a random encounter.
Right.
It's a glimpse into deeper spiritual realities and a foreshadowing of what's to come.
Absolutely.
It makes you want to dig deeper into the symbolism and try to unravel the layers of meaning.
It does.
And this encounter sets the stage for the next pivotal moment,
Right.
the covenant with Abram,
Yes.
where God formalizes the promises and establishes a lasting bond.
That's right.
It's a turning point in the narrative and a foundation for the unfolding drama of faith, family, and legacy.
Absolutely.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground already.
We have.
We've seen ambition and its consequences,
Mhm.
the importance of lineage and genealogies,
Yeah.
the complexities of faith and doubt, and even a glimpse into the mystical.
That's right.
What can we expect as we delve deeper into the stories of Abram,
Yeah.
Sarai, and the unfolding covenant?
We'll get ready for even more twists and turns.
Okay.
We'll witness the birth of Isaac, the tensions that arise within Abram's family,
Okay.
and ultimately the profound test of faith that solidifies his legacy.
I'm ready.
These stories will challenge our assumptions,
Yeah.
provoke our emotions,
Okay.
and leave us pondering the enduring mysteries of the human spirit and its relationship with the divine.
Can't wait.
Yeah.
We'll be back after the break.
Okay.
We left off with this sense of anticipation, God's covenant with Abram, these grand promises, and yet Sarah remains unable to conceive.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder how they reconcile those promises with the reality of their situation.
It's a point where I think the ancient context really collides with modern sensibilities.
Right.
Sarah, unable to bear children, suggests that Abram have a child with Hagar, her maidservant.
Right.
And this arrangement, while jarring to us, was a practice in that time,
Sure.
reflecting a very different understanding of family and inheritance.
I can only imagine the mix of emotions.
Oh, yeah.
Hope for fulfilling the promise,
Right.
potential jealousy,
Mm-hmm.
the power dynamics between mistress and servant.
Absolutely.
It adds a whole other layer of complexity to the story.
Absolutely. And Hagar's story is one that continues to resonate, I think, with those who have felt marginalized or voiceless.
For sure.
She's caught in this web of power and promise, carrying a child that in some ways represents both hope and disruption.
It's heartbreaking when Sarah, after Hagar treats her harshly,
Yeah.
leading Hagar to flee into the wilderness.
Right.
What do you make of this turn of events?
This is where I think the text doesn't shy away from the raw emotions involved. Sarah, even though she proposed this arrangement, grapples with jealousy and insecurity.
Right.
And Hagar, facing this mistreatment, acts out of self-preservation.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that even within a divinely chosen family, human relationships are messy and fraught with conflict.
They are, for sure.
Yeah.
And yet, even in the midst of this turmoil, God doesn't abandon Hagar.
No.
An angel appears to her, urging her to return, but also promising that her son Ishmael will father a great nation.
This moment is crucial.
Yeah.
It shows that the covenant isn't confined to just one lineage.
Okay.
God's blessing extends even to those who are pushed to the margins, acknowledging the complexities of human actions and relationships.
It makes me think about how we often view things in a very black and white way.
Yeah.
Chosen versus not chosen,
Mm-hmm.
righteous versus unrighteous.
Right.
But these stories seem to suggest that God's workings are much more intricate and multifaceted.
You've hit on a key point. These narratives resist easy categorization.
Right.
They show us that God's plans can unfold in unexpected ways.
For sure. Encompassing even those who might seem peripheral to the main story.
And then, even with Ishmael's birth, the promise of a son for Sarah doesn't fade away.
No, it doesn't.
God reaffirms the covenant with Abram, changing his name to Abraham and Sarai's to Sarah,
Right.
marking a new chapter.
This name change isn't just symbolic.
Okay.
It signifies a deepening of the covenant.
Hmm.
God establishes circumcision as the sign of this bond, a physical marker of belonging to the chosen lineage.
The covenant of circumcision, though, is something that has sparked a lot of debate over the centuries.
Yeah.
What are some of the different interpretations of this ritual and its significance within Abrahamic traditions?
It's a practice laden with meaning,
Yeah.
and interpretations vary widely.
Right.
Some see it as a purely physical sign, a visible demonstration of the covenant.
Okay.
Others focus on the symbolic aspects,
Right.
linking it to themes of purification, sacrifice, or even spiritual rebirth.
Okay.
Still others emphasize its social implications.
Highlighting its role in marking group identity and distinguishing the chosen people.
So rather than one simple explanation,
Right.
it's a practice layered with symbolic meaning that continues to evolve even today.
It does.
It's a reminder that these ancient texts aren't static, but invite ongoing interpretation and dialogue.
Precisely. And I think this dynamic interpretation is crucial for understanding how these stories have shaped religious and cultural practices throughout history.
Now, alongside the covenant of circumcision,
Right.
we get this incredible reaffirmation of the promise.
Yes.
Sarah, despite her old age, will bear a son, Isaac.
Right.
Abraham, upon hearing this, laughs.
I can't blame him for his reaction.
No.
It seems impossible, a situation where human logic and divine promise clash.
Right.
And yet embedded within this laughter, there's this glimmer of faith,
Yeah.
a willingness to believe, even when it defies reason.
It speaks to the paradoxical nature of faith.
Yes.
Trusting in something beyond our comprehension,
Mhm.
embracing the possibility of the impossible.
And that's what makes this narrative so compelling.
Yes.
It constantly pushes us to confront the limits of our understanding,
It does.
inviting us to grapple with the mysteries at the heart of the human experience.
It seems like every time we think we've got a handle on things,
Yeah,
the story takes another unexpected turn.
it does.
And that's definitely the case with what comes next.
Okay.
The destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah.
Here, the narrative shifts dramatically.
Clear.
We're confronted with the themes of sin,
Right.
judgment, and divine wrath.
Yeah.
God reveals to Abraham his intention to destroy these cities because of their wickedness.
It's a moment that raises so many questions.
Yeah.
What constitutes wickedness in this context?
Right.
And how do we reconcile this act of destruction with the idea of a merciful God?
Those are questions that have been debated for centuries.
Yeah.
Some interpretations focus on the literal sinfulness of the inhabitants,
Okay.
pointing to their lack of hospitality or their sexual transgressions. Others see it as a broader condemnation of social injustice and a warning against the dangers of unchecked power.
What always strikes me is Abraham's response.
Yeah.
He doesn't just passively accept God's decree.
No.
He boldly intercedes, questioning God's justice and pleading for mercy.
Right.
It's almost like he's bargaining with God,
He is.
testing the limits of divine compassion.
It's an extraordinary moment of dialogue between humanity and the divine.
Agree.
Abraham, while acknowledging God's authority,
Right.
doesn't shy away from expressing his concerns.
Yeah.
He challenges God,
Mm-hmm.
asking if he will truly destroy the righteous with the wicked,
Right.
pushing for a higher standard of justice.
It's a powerful example of how faith isn't about blind obedience,
No.
but about engaging in a dialogue with the divine, even when it's difficult or uncomfortable.
Right.
It suggests that we're not meant to passively accept everything, but to wrestle with our understanding of God's actions in the world.
And this dialogue highlights the tension, I think, between justice and mercy, a tension that continues to shape our understanding of ethics and morality.
I see that.
Even though Sodom and Gomorrah are ultimately destroyed,
Right.
Abraham's intercession plants a seed.
Yeah.
The idea that divine justice isn't arbitrary, but tempered by a deep concern for humanity.
So even in the midst of judgment, there's this glimmer of hope, this suggestion that God's mercy can extend even to those who have strayed.
Right.
It's a reminder that these stories aren't meant to provide easy answers,
Right.
but to invite us into a deeper exploration of the complexities of faith, morality, and the human condition.
And amidst the destruction, we have the story of Lot and his family fleeing the city.
Right.
His wife, disobeying the command not to look back, is turned into a pillar of salt.
Yet that's always felt like a harsh punishment.
It has.
And it makes me wonder about the deeper meaning behind this transformation.
Right.
Is it purely about obedience and disobedience, or is there something else going on?
It's a detail that has sparked various interpretations. Some see it as a warning against longing for the past,
Okay.
a reminder that clinging to what's been lost can be destructive.
I could see that.
Others focus on the theme of disobedience and the consequences of ignoring divine commands. And still others suggest it symbolizes the dangers of attachment to material possessions, represented by the city itself.
It's interesting how this seemingly small detail can open up so many different avenues for interpretation.
Yeah.
It makes me think about how we as modern readers bring our own perspectives and experiences to these ancient texts,
Yes.
constantly reshaping their meaning through our own lens.
That's the beauty of engaging with these stories. They're not static relics, but living narratives that continue to evolve and speak to us in new ways
Sure.
across time and cultures.
Yeah.
And as we delve deeper into the narrative, we'll see even more twists and turns, moments that challenge our assumptions and invite us to re-examine our understanding of faith, family, and the human journey.
Okay, I am ready. We've seen judgment and mercy and those messy human moments,
Yeah.
even within a divinely chosen family.
Right.
It feels like we're reaching a turning point in the narrative, especially with the promise of Isaac's birth hanging in the balance.
You're right. The tension is building. We have the fulfillment of the promise with Isaac's birth, which brings joy but also reignites conflict and raises questions about the fate of Hagar and Ishmael.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine Sarah's reaction to Isaac's arrival, considering everything that led up to this moment.
The text portrays her as protective of Isaac wanting to secure his position as the sole heir. This leads to the heartbreaking scene where she demands that Abraham send Hagar and Ishmael away.
That scene always gets to me. It's easy to judge Sarah, But I also wonder if we can see her as a woman grappling with societal pressures, anxieties about inheritance, and the deep-seated desire to protect her child's future.
That's a compassionate reading, and it reminds us that these characters, even when they make choices we might disagree with, are complex individuals navigating incredibly challenging situations. It also forces us to consider the ethical implications of those choices, how power dynamics and cultural norms shape even the most intimate family relationships.
And again, we see God's presence even in the midst of this painful separation. He doesn't abandon Hagar and Ishmael in the wilderness, reaffirming his promise that Ishmael will also become a great nation.
This is a crucial point. It shows that the covenant, while focused on Isaac's lineage, doesn't negate God's concern for others. God's blessings extend beyond the chosen line, acknowledging the complexities of human relationships and the ripple effects of our choices.
It challenges the idea of a single exclusive path to God's favor, suggesting a more expansive view of divine grace and providence.
Precisely, and it highlights the enduring legacy of Abraham. He becomes not only the father of the chosen people through Isaac, but also a figure whose descendants spread out, forming diverse nations and cultures, each carrying a piece of that original covenant.
It's almost like the scattering from the Tower of Babel is playing out in a different way, not as a punishment, but as part of a larger, more intricate plan.
That's a fascinating connection. And it leads us to the ultimate test of Abraham's faith, the Akedah, the binding of Isaac. It's a story that has haunted and inspired theologians and philosophers for centuries.
This is the part that I always struggle with. God commands Abraham to sacrifice Isaac, the son of promise, the very child he waited so long for. How do we make sense of this command? Was it a test, a cruel joke, or something else entirely?
It's a passage that defies easy answers and invites us to confront the limits of human understanding. Some interpretations emphasize Abraham's unwavering obedience, seeing it as a model of submission to divine will no matter the cost. Others grapple with the ethical implications, questioning how a loving God could demand such a sacrifice.
Yeah, it's hard to reconcile that with the image of a merciful God that we see in other parts of the narrative.
Yeah.
And yet there's this sense that Abraham, even in his anguish, trusts in God's ultimate goodness. He doesn't rebel, doesn't despair, but proceeds with a heavy heart, believing that even in this darkness, God will provide.
That unwavering faith, even in the face of the unimaginable, is what has resonated with so many throughout history. And the story doesn't end with Isaac's death. At the last moment, an angel intervenes. A ram is provided as a substitute sacrifice, and Isaac is spared.
It's a moment of both relief and profound theological significance. It affirms that God doesn't desire human sacrifice, that the covenant isn't built on bloodshed, but on faith's mercy and the promise of life.
And it highlights the importance of sacrifice in a different way, not as a literal offering of life, but as a willingness to surrender everything, to hold nothing back from God. This act of radical surrender becomes a model for later generations, a reminder that faith requires a deep trust, even when it seems illogical or painful.
So these stories, while ancients continue to speak to us across millennia, they challenge us to grapple with the big questions: the nature of faith, the tension between free will and divine providence, the complexities of family and relationships, and the enduring mystery of the human journey.
They invite us to wrestle with our own beliefs, to confront our own assumptions about good and evil, and to seek deeper understanding within these timeless narratives. They remind us that even within these ancient texts, there are no easy answers, but rather a rich tapestry of human experience woven into the fabric of a divine narrative.
It's been an incredible journey through these pivotal chapters of Genesis. We've seen ambition and its consequences, the unfolding of the covenant, the messy realities of family dynamics, the struggle with faith and doubt, and the profound test of Abraham's surrender.
And within these stories, we've glimpsed the enduring power of faith, the complexity of God's relationship with humanity, and the timeless questions that continue to shape our understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
We encourage you to continue exploring these narratives, to delve deeper into their interpretations and meanings, and to discover how they might illuminate your own journey of faith family and the search for meaning in a complex world. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.